Welcome to the eCommerce podcast with Matt Edmundson, a show that brings you regular interviews, tips, and tools for building your business online.
Let me take just a few seconds here to tell you about my brand new e-commerce course that is perfectly designed for those of you who are looking to build your own online business, right? I know it's going to work well for you guys because we deep dive into the process that I use to build my own e-commerce businesses. We're going to look at the 6 key elements that you need to be aware of for building a successful online store. I'm utterly convinced it'll make a huge difference to your business. I am super proud of it, let me tell you, and it is brand new for 2020. It's called the eCommerce Masterclass. You can check out what other people think about the course. You can find out more information on my site at mattedmundson.com. Let me give a big shout out to one of our show sponsors, Curious Digital. You know what? I love its flexibility. It's such a great platform. You know how when you start out, you might typically use an online platform because they're cheap, they're easy to use, super accessible. But you know what? They aren't that flexible. And as your business grows, you end up moving to an agency, right? Because that's just what you do. And at some point, you're going to have this nightmare to deal with, and it can be incredibly expensive. And the thing for me that I love about KD is it will grow with you. You can start out on the platform easily, and as your business grows, then KD will adapt with you. Now, I don't know of any other platform that does all of that. So if you're in the market for a new e-commerce platform, make sure you follow the links from mattedmundson.com. Take advantage of the offers that they've got for you, and let me know what you think. A big shout out to another show sponsor, the Lightbulb Agency. These guys basically do those bits of e-commerce that you either don't want to do or don't have the skills or expertise to do, right? It's a great service. Let me tell you, these guys do fulfillment, e-commerce marketing, content creation, customer service, product research. I mean, the list goes on. So if you need help with your own online business, you're looking for ways to grow, and you need some help to get there, do get in touch with them. And again, just follow the links from today's show notes. Head on over to mattedmundson.com and you can follow the links to the Lightbulb Agency. We'd love to put you in touch with those guys. Okay, welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, Matt Edmundson. It is great that you have joined us on this show. This is a very special recording with my now very good friend, Tony Guarnaccia. I'll explain why I'm laughing in a minute when you're listening to the show. But we are here to help you thrive. We're here to help you grow your e-commerce business and do all kinds of amazing stuff online. Now, this is a very special show for 2 reasons. One, it is the final show of season 3. I can't believe we've made through 3 seasons already. But it is also like I'm guessing our 4th or 5th attempt, Tony, to record this. As you know, if you're a listener to the show, a regular to the show, I broadcast live over Facebook at the same time as we record these podcast interviews. But for whatever reason, when Tony and I get online together, the computer that I've got, the Apple Mac, which I've spent ludicrous amounts of money on so I could do this, just keeps crashing. And so I don't know why it is. We've not got to the bottom of it yet, but Tony has suffered. But Tony is with us now. We're doing this on Zoom the old-fashioned way. We've just ditched the live streaming thing. We're just going to record it. And Tony, thanks for being here. And listen, thanks for your patience. I really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. It's my pleasure.
On the surface of it, we may look like a professional company. But yeah, geez, never mind. You should never, what is it they say? You should never work with children and animals. And I'm now going to throw Apple Mac computers live streaming into that mix. That's just me. So Tony, listen, I feel like I know you like really well because we've had so many conversations. But for those that don't know you, that have not come across you, just give folks a bit of background.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in small business. My parents had a small Italian bakery. When I was 12, we lost everything. We lost the house, the dog, the car, everything. It was really
No
a
way.
traumatic time. Yeah. And that kind of set me up for kind of my future, my purpose, which is to help businesses avoid kind of crisis and come out stronger. And
Yeah.
so years later, when I was in college, I studied business, went to university, studied business, and left and started an e-commerce company of all things. And that business was
Great
called
company to start, right?
that's my first business was an e-commerce business. So back in the day, this is the late 90s, I was on the top of Google.
Well, that was cutting edge, right? If you're doing e-commerce in the late 90s, I mean, that's
Yeah,
like some of the first guys to market at this point, right?
correct. Yeah, we were one of the first online bakeries in the States. And we had amazing technology. We were able to take a cake, put a photo on it, ship it anywhere in the country, and we won a bunch of awards. We had great PR. We ended up mailing cakes to Jennifer Lopez and Jay-Z and IBM and Microsoft, all these huge companies. And
Wow.
so like I was sharing before, I thought I was a rock star. I thought, man, I am so smart. I got this down.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and
Check
that's
me
why,
out, guys. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that's why I learned I didn't know what I didn't know. And then, that business came crashing down. And so that was, it was a tough time because it was kind of failure number two. Failure number one was me as a kid. I didn't
Yeah.
really have influence over it. Failure number two was really on me because I was driving all this. And at the time, I was newly married, baby on the way, and I was like, this sucks. How do I get out of this? How do I learn what I missed?
Yeah.
Who knows how to actually do this? And that's why I started working for some great companies over the span of 10 years, like Google,
Yeah.
Ford, ADP, a bunch of really amazing companies.
So in this kind of, there's so many stories like this, right? Where we set something up, it goes a bit nuts, but we didn't get maybe some of the fundamentals right. The business collapses in on itself. But as a result of that, we learn, we grow, we develop, and, here we are.
Yeah.
And I know, one of the words that you use a lot, which I think is such an important word for this moment in time, is resilience,
Yes.
right? And you and I have talked about this, but this idea of resilience. And so was your first e-commerce business, the pictures on the cake, which is, we see it all over the place now, but it was really cool back then.
Yeah.
Was it resilience? Was that missing? How you would define resilience? Is that why it didn't work, your e-commerce business?
No, I mean, the thing that hurt it was the business stopped becoming valuable. I mean, to me, resilience is bouncing back and doing something that, that is workable.
Yeah.
If a business is fundamentally not workable, in this case, it wasn't because it wasn't profitable, then it's really not resilience. It's, lunacy to keep trying to make something work that's not going to work. And
It's
really
insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. So resilience in my case was going out, learning what I had to do, and then starting another business. And I think entrepreneurs have resiliency in their blood, for the most part. If you're a real entrepreneur, you're going to bounce back. You're going to do something else. You're going to find what works and keep working until you do.
Yeah. That's very true. Actually, I can attest to that. That is a common trait amongst entrepreneurs. It's not that they don't fail. It's just that actually, if it fails, it's just a stepping stone to something else, isn't it? It's the trendy word is pivot, isn't it? We pivot at the moment, and that's what you do. That's what entrepreneurs do. You find the way, and that's what resiliency is all about. Yeah. So what do you mean when you said for your cake business saying you stopped being valuable?
Profitable.
Profitable.
So what happened was we were very dependent on shipping because we could take the photo cake. Wasn't innovation at the time. It's a lot more ubiquitous now, but the real innovation back then was the ability to mail a cake. Yeah. So we had a whole system that had dry ice and packaging, and that became very cost prohibitive, very expensive. And then we also, when UPS and FedEx raised their prices, the business wasn't working. And so we weren't viable anymore. And just the cost, I think I mentioned this before, but the cost per acquisition relative to the lifetime value just wasn't there. We weren't getting repeat buyers. The cost for getting them in the first place was too much. And so the math just didn't work out.
No.
No.
So before you talked about this sort of this idea of the results loop and the flywheel that I really want to get into tonight. And just sort of give us the headline. Where does that start with the flywheel?
Yeah, so the idea behind the flywheel comes from Jim Collins' seminal book called Good to Great, where he talks about great companies leverage a flywheel. And that's all great in theory, but what I noticed is a lot of businesses, they don't have a flywheel. Their flywheel is broken or non-existent.
Yeah.
And so what I said is, okay, how do you actually get results, which I call the results flywheel? And really what I discovered is there's really three components. You need to know what you need to do, you need to know how to do it, and then you actually have to do it, take action. When those three things are in combination, you can get the flywheel effect. If they're missing, then generally you get stuck or worse.
Okay, so what you need to do, how you need to do it, and step number 3 was take action, right? So I've written that down. So have you got an example of how that would work?
Yeah, so this applies to anything. So a lot of times I just use the example of like weight loss, so I need to lose weight. That's an easy one. Then you need to know how to do it. So you have to, eat less, exercise more, etc. And then finally you have to actually do it, which is where most people get stuck, right?
Yeah,
the
that's
actual
where most
doing
people
it.
fail. Yeah. I failed that for many years. I knew what to do, just didn't do it. Just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately for small businesses, a lot of times they have the right intention and they do take action. What they're missing is the what, the strategy. And so if you look at it, where you are today is really the result of the decisions you made in the past.
Yeah.
Now there can be exceptions. There's like life chances. If you're born in the middle of, Africa and you're underprivileged, that could be different. But for most of us, especially the people probably listening to this call, we're in the upper 10% of the world, at least.
Yeah.
Right?
At least. Yeah.
At least. And so for us, where we end up is really the result of our decisions, or really another way to think about it is the priorities we choose. And you can think about your priorities in terms of your time, your effort, and your money. Where you invest, where you put your effort makes all the difference. And that's why it's so important to know the what. So what should I be focused on? Should I be doing SEO? Should I be doing Facebook? Should I be doing something else? That is really the critical thing you want to take into account first, because that's going to drive everything else. And then also having goals attached to it. So it's not just like, I just have to do Facebook, but I want to get X many sales. I want to get X many growth, year over year, et cetera.
Yeah.
So many new buyers from this, et cetera.
Yeah. And I like that, because that's critical. Again, it's one of those things, isn't it? I have so many people who will come to me and say, Matt, how do I do Facebook ads, right, for my e-commerce business? And the first question I inevitably ask straight after them is, well, actually, should you be doing Facebook ads? Let's not make the assumption that you should, but actually tell me why you should be doing them. And so this is your what, isn't it? So what do you need to do? Do you need, as a business, with your audience, with your business model, with the products that you are selling, do you need to do Facebook ads? Yeah. And have you figured that out first, rather than just assuming you need to do them because everybody else is doing them? Is that correct? Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it could get, it gets more granular as you get into deeper. I'm very much simplifying it, but the what can go across many different facets, which I'll talk about, when we get into the loop.
Yeah, no, that's great. But I think, you know what, for me, the most powerful things are the most simple things, because I understand them. Yeah. And, it was Steve Jobs, isn't it, who was coined as saying, simplify, simplify, simplify. His whole thing was to simplify everything. That's why there was only ever one button on the front of the iPhone. Do you know what I mean? And there's cut everything back. And I love the simplicity of this. What do you need to do? How are you going to do that? And how are you going to take action? What action are you actually going to take? How are you going to measure that? How are you going to be accountable to that? How are you going to ensure you're taking the right actions? No, brilliant stuff. So this leads into what you call the results loop.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what is the results loop, and why honestly, why should I care?
No, it's a great question. So the results loop is really what I discovered drives the growth for the best companies in the world. So I took what I learned from working with over the 10 years, working with some of the great companies, and tried to apply that to small businesses. And this really started when I had my marketing agency, because I noticed a lot of companies were struggling. You know, they want to do Facebook or SEO or whatever else you could think of, and they weren't getting the traction they wanted. And I was thinking, why is that? And what I remembered was working in the corporate world, we did not leave anything to chance. You know, we'd have teams of people sitting for weeks on end with 30 tab spreadsheets planning what we were going to do and how we're going to get there, and the contingencies. What if we don't hit this? What do we do? You know, all that was worked out. Business owners, you know, they spend more time planning, you know, their vacation than their business. And so, you know, it's crazy.
And you know what? I laugh. It's sad, but it's true, right? It is sad, but it's true.
So I know that's the reality. So I said to myself, okay, if that's the case, how do I take what these best companies are doing and make it simple to understand, easy to execute, so anyone can do it in like 15 minutes? And that was my whole mission with creating the results loop. So that's the result of it, is I distilled everything they did into just 6 factors that anyone can really understand.
Wow. And like, I mean, I've said it before, but that is a heck of a mission to reduce all of that down. So something you can do easily 15 minutes and work on, right?
Correct.
So what are these 6 elements then?
Yeah. So the first one is the markets you choose. So the markets are critical, because that is how you segment your market, or your audiences. So, you know, it can be divided in many different ways. It could be geographically, you know, we're only going to serve this particular region or that region. It could be by people's needs. It could be by people's behaviors, but you want to come up with at least one framework or one idea of how you slice and dice the market. That way you can prioritize the sub-markets within those markets, and that's going to give you the highest return on investment when you kind of segment that out.
So you're going to get the highest return on investment when you hit these sub-markets.
Correct.
So what you mean by sub-markets is, let's take, I don't know, the market of, oh, you give me that. My mind's gone blank.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long day. One of my e-commerce clients sells fly fishing.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he had different kinds of segments there. You know, there was people that would do fly fishing offshore. There'd be other people that would do it, you know, in lakes, you know, different areas. I'm trying to remember myself what they were, because it was a couple of years ago. But he would segment the market that way. But you could also segment it by, you know, male versus female, for instance. You know, if it's primarily, he happened to have a primarily male audience, but the targeting their wives, for instance, could be a great win, because it could be a great gift, because they could sell a rod and it's $1,000, that kind of thing. And so it's looking at, okay, where are we getting the greatest return? Like, and so once you get some traction, one of the things you want to do is look at your list of buyers and say, is there any patterns here? That can help determine, you know, what markets you're going to serve. If you're a startup and you don't have that, look at your competitors, see if you can model them, or see if you can find, you know, and how do you do that? Well, look at their website. A lot of times they'll have blog posts that target their market. And so you can be kind of strategic and say, okay, where is the lowest hanging fruit?
Yeah. And also, I think you can also, I mean, check their social media. For me, it's social media is a giveaway. Who you're serving and who you're trying to reach becomes really obvious on their social feeds, even what social media platforms they're on, especially if they're smart, right? They've thought this through. Okay, so the first one is markets. Figuring out what markets you're going to go into, segmenting those markets. How do you choose the right market then to hit?
Yeah, so what you want to look at is, well, this kind of ties into the next phase, which is your products and services, which I call offerings. And so you want to match those two together, because your everything is based on those two fundamental pillars. So your product, your pricing, all that is going to matter, because, for instance, if you have a high-end market, so another way to segment the market is by price point. Because if you're going higher end, right, you want to make sure your products and services are of higher quality and a higher price to justify that. And that sometimes can be a place to prioritize. But how do you prioritize is based off of the profitability a lot of times. And also, you can go back to what we talked about initially, the profitability and also the cash flow. So if it's a product that might take forever to ship, you know, it's months delayed for whatever reason, maybe you don't prioritize that. It's also looking at the average order value. And also, is this a product that could get them to become more recurring? I
Yeah.
always like loss leader products. So if you can get someone to come in, a lot of times people call it a tripwire. People come in on a low price point. If we know that they can come on that product and they'll buy it again and again, that's a different scenario too. So you have to kind of look at it, but the end goal should be to maximize your lifetime value. That's really where you look at it. And there's many ways to do it.
Yeah, you've talked about this before, the lifetime value. How do I, and you're going to hear it a lot, right? We use it a lot in e-commerce, lifetime value. What sort of things do you use to measure the lifetime value of a customer, right? How do you know how to calculate that number?
Yeah, so you want to look at, on average, how many times they're going to stay with you over a period of time. If you don't know, 3 years is a good estimate.
Okay.
Then what you want to look at is how many times are they buying, the frequency.
Yeah.
So they buying more than once during the year, and the goal should be to get them to buy more. And then you want to look at the average price point of every product, and ideally the profitability, because the profitability is so important. And then you just multiply that out. Now, from a technical perspective, you can get a lot of this data right from, if you have WooCommerce, or if you have, any of the major shopping, Shopify, a lot of times they'll have that data. And also Google Analytics will provide a lot of that data as well. And so you can build a dashboard and be able to see that and track it over time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fair enough. So we've got our markets, and then we talk about offerings. So what we're bringing to the market. How have you seen that work well in terms of people sort of offerings that you think have come to the market and come well, just as examples that we can think of, for example?
So the question is a new product or offering?
Yeah, sorry, I need to be much clearer. So you talk about markets, segmenting them down and bringing an offer into that market. And in the markets, you talked about the fly fishing. In the offerings, what's an example that we could think of that would help us connect with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, let me go back to basics, actually. The way these are actually paired together is by looking at in a matrix. And so there is a famous matrix you might learn in university. It's called the Ansop Matrix. And most people don't think about this, but it's very powerful.
The Ansop Matrix.
Yeah, Ansop Matrix. So that was one of the ideas I had behind creating these two pillars. But if you look at that, you can say, okay, what new products can I offer the new markets? Or do I offer new markets to or do I offer new products to existing markets?
Okay.
Or do I take my existing products and go to new markets?
Yeah.
So that exercise is really what can drive it. So it's not just, okay, I have a sub-market, I have a new offering. It's really looking at those combinations, because that forces your mind to think about how
you're starting to do some creative thinking, aren't you?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you do that, so to give you an example of how that would work, I'll just use something really basic, like a coffee shop. So we have coffee shops in our area. And so what they'll do is a lot of times they start off in coffee and they say, okay, I have this market. How can I expand it? Well, let's offer them donuts, right?
Yeah.
Or they might say, hey, now we're going to go into a new market. We're going to go into the lunch market or and offer them new products. So they kind of go hand in hand. And so you can find examples, innumerable examples. Look at what Amazon did. They originally had technology they were creating for themselves, right? And then they started offering more and more of that technology for others. Now all of a sudden they have this whole data division that's doing, that's growing faster than anything else. Yeah. And so it's really looking at how can I leverage as much of what I have as much as I can. And the easiest thing to do is leverage your existing buyers. So if they're already with you today, how can you get more out of those same kinds of buyers?
That's really, really good. So what new products could I bring to my existing customers? That's a really great question, isn't it? We use words like upsell and cross-sell, and these are all it's just the basic same questions, isn't it? How can you maximize the value that you deliver to your clients and therefore retain from your clients?
Correct.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, so markets, offering, what's next?
The next one is value, and you can see on the results loop, or we're just on podcast now, so maybe you can't see it. But if you look at the manifesto, you can see it. It's kind of the bridge between the one side and the other. So the value is what connects everything, and the value answers the question: why would someone buy from you? as opposed to anyone else, or do nothing at all. And
Yeah.
so that's really the critical function, because once you define your products and services, you have to say, okay, why would someone actually buy it? How do I make it unique? How do I make it more valuable? And sometimes that can be a challenge in e-commerce. So if you're just selling the same things that everyone else is doing, why should they buy from you? You know, do you offer better, customer support? You know, like Mac. Are you able to bundle things? A lot of times you can add extra value in e-commerce by bundling. So if you just take, a candle and you're against all the other candles, why would someone buy that? But if you kind of put it together with, the candle holder and the flower, you kind of bundle it together for a Valentine's Day gift, all of a sudden it's worth a lot more. So it's really thinking creatively, and really what you're buying there, what the customer's buying is time.
Yeah.
Because you're saving them time, because they don't have to hunt for every single thing. You see this all the time with technology. You get the computer, you get this, you get that, and people don't have to think about it. And that helps you get a much higher margin, because you're not commodity at that point. They're not cross comparing you with everybody else.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So by increasing the value, you stop them hunting around, you stop them comparing and doing the comparison. And one way to increase value is to do the bundles. It's like they get stuff from you that they don't get from anywhere else.
Correct.
That's really great. I mean, how else do you increase value? What are some of the other things that you've seen? I know, for example, one of the things that we did at Jersey, which is one of my own e-commerce businesses. It's a beauty site here in the UK, right? And one of the things that we did, I tell this story just because I love it. It's one of my favorite stories. One of the things that we did to add value was we stopped shipping the products in a jiffy bag. Now, what I mean by this is, I don't know what you call them in the States. A jiffy bag is basically an envelope that has bubble wrap inside it. It's like a padded envelope, okay? And so people would spend, on average, say 60 or 70 quid on skincare off the beauty site, which is a lot of money, right? And so we would put the products in the jiffy bag and send them out. Now, the products were actually sent in a cardboard box. So you would buy, say, a moisturizer, and the moisturizer would come in a cardboard box. And I knew that straight away you would throw that cardboard box out, right? But even though you would throw it out and it had no residual value to this transaction at all, if that arrived damaged in the post, you thought the product had been damaged, even though you know it hadn't. Do you know what I mean? In some way, it's just an outer cardboard box. It's a bit like going to the supermarket. When you buy tins off the shelf, you always avoid the ones that have been bashed, right? Yeah, it's that kind of weird thing. And so we started to put the products in boxes. And so the goods would arrive in perfect condition, whilst all my competitors were shipping them in these jiffy bags. And then, we had to keep innovating in this area. Eventually, a couple of years ago, what we did was we stopped putting products in those boxes with, the plastic air pockets, the big plastic pillar type things to protect the products. We put them, we used packaging, which was much more biodegradable, environmentally friendly, and a little bit more fun. We actually used popcorn, and still do use popcorn.
Interesting.
So we have popcorn machines going all the time in the warehouse for the packaging, which is amazing. And so we get a lot of we never got a social media share when we just use the plastic pillars. But as soon as we started using popcorn, we got inundated with reviews and social media shares. And just adding value, just thinking about, what can we do to make this a better experience for our customer? So that's the kind of thing you're talking about here. Is that where I would put that on your results lead?
Yeah. I mean, it would be a subset of it. When I look at value, there's so many ways to look at value. At the end of the day, value is an exchange. And so at the top of the value chain, you really are exchanging, in this case, like what we're doing here, I'm exchanging my time for people's attention. So that's kind of at the top of the funnel. The next stage is you usually exchange even more value for something even more valuable, even more, so for instance, people are going to download maybe my manifesto and exchange to get even more valuable content. And then the last stage is you're exchanging usually money for some kind of result. So at the end of the day, the value is the result I get. And that could be looking better, feeling refreshed, etc. It doesn't have to be, you know, it could be intangible sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how what value is. It's a exchange. Now, there's really two kinds of value, however. There's real value and there's perceived value. So real value is what it actually does. So that is, you know, it does the job I paid it to do. You know, it tastes good, it works, etc. You know, it records. I have to throw that one in.
Yeah. It's a sore point, but let's move on.
Yeah, there you go. And then the other part of it is perceived value. So this goes into the packaging. This goes to your authority. You know, why everything that's wrapped around it. That's not actually. It's more intangible. So the real is tangible. The perceived is intangible. And then under that, really, you can ask yourself really the basic questions you learn in grade school. The who, the what, the why, the where, the when. So people will buy, for instance, higher perceived value, the why. You know, if you have a mission and you have a purpose behind it, people will buy that. It could be, you know, going on the more tangible side, you might be educating people with it. People also buy because you're authority. You know, how many athletes are going into, you know, nutrition and things like that, and how many celebrities are now offering exercise programs because they have a high perceived value. So people buy that because of who they are, not necessarily what the product is. So value has many
I saw that with who's the guy that played Thor?
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah. He's done a fitness app, hasn't he? I've seen that. And he's killing it with that. And you just thought, years ago, you never saw the movie stars doing this, did you? But you're right, they're doing. The first time I ever saw it, and it may be an age thing, was the George Foreman grill.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Do you remember the George Foreman grill? And he killed it with that George Foreman grill, didn't he?
He did. Yeah.
And so I see what you're saying now. So they're bringing value with these extra things. So the apps. And so yes, you've seen me on TV, and now you can feel like you're connected to me much closer using this fitness app. I'm going to train you. You know, Chris Hemsworth is my trainer, kind of thing. It's,
exactly. So
clever,
there's so many
right?
ways to look at value. You can really expand it. And so people get the trap of just thinking about the product itself. A lot of times it's the intangibles around it that can, you know, increase it, and more importantly, increase your profits, because those aren't really hitting your bottom line.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. I mean, I don't know if this fits right now, but one of the things that I've noticed with e-commerce is when we're coming up to Black Friday, right? So at the time of recording, we're in October. Yeah. And so by the time you hear this, it's going to be much closer to Black Friday, right? So as you're listening to this in your car or wherever you're listening to it, and there's going to be two real main offers you see, isn't there, on Black Friday? Number one is I'm going to discount my product by some crazy number, especially because retail has just dive bombed this year. Yeah. So I'm going to discount my product. The other way to add value is not to discount, but is to add, say, a gift with purchase to increase the perceived value of what you're getting, which is what you were talking about earlier on.
Absolutely.
With the bundles and stuff. And there'll be the two main ways that you see companies do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are tried and true, and they work all the time. And they know that. But the reason why they're discounting it is, again, they're looking at the lifetime value. So they're probably offering one product low, especially if it's, you know, I'll use a non-e-commerce example, but like the retail stores, like we have a lot of Walmarts out here. They give you, you know, a TV for $10, but they know you're going to buy 20 other things that they're going to be very profitable. And a lot of times in the physical store, they'll have those products right nearby it. Or this is where they're the accessories. You know, it's like, oh, I have the TV, but I need the HDMI cord. That cord is going to be up, you know, marked way up. Yeah. And so Amazon is notorious for doing this, right? Yeah. You buy the product and then you see something else way higher associated with it.
Yeah. That's very, very true. In the UK, I don't know if you know this, we actually have Walmart.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Well, not technically as you have it in the States. Walmart bought out Asda, which is a big supermarket chain here. And so it's still called Asda, but on the sign, it's like a Walmart company or something like that. And I've been in Walmarts in the States, and I've been into Asda, and you can definitely see the similarities. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that said, like you say, it's really clever. We call them loss leaders here, where you sell something at a discount, maybe even making a small loss on it, knowing full well that you're going to get something on the front end. And I've seen actually a lot of people, especially in the beauty industry, do this, where they'll bring you in knowing the first order, they're making a massive loss on that first order. But their faith is in their ability to market and remarket to you, so you buy a second time. So on the second order, they break even. On the third order, they make their profit.
Correct. Yeah, it's very common. I mean, like I mentioned before, I can't remember if this was in a prior conversation or not, but you look at Columbia House and the early record stores. They give you, I remember buying CDs for a penny, and then they would have you getting it every month on a subscription, and you're dropping $12 a month. And so that model was really where it started. It was back in the 80s or whenever that was, way back then. Or maybe it happened before that, but that's the earliest I can recall. And it works today.
Yeah, you're showing your age now, Tony, talking about being a kid in the 80s. Not going to lie. Yeah, but I grew up in the 80s as well. So, I'm a product of that decade. So we've got markets, we've got offerings, and we've got value. Is there anything else you wanted to add on value?
No, I think that's the key thing, is really understanding the 3 levels of value of where you're exchanging. Then looking at the perceived versus real, and then how you do that, which is really asking the questions, the questions of what, where, when, why, how, etc.
Okay. So what comes after value?
So this is getting new buyers, and that usually is the most expensive, right? Because the new buyer you acquire is always the most expensive. But this is where you have a funnel. You get people through, whether it's online media, whether it's PR, however you're getting it. That's really what drives the buyers.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this is, for me, this is the one where everybody instantly goes to, right?
Right. Because that's why I don't talk about it much. I'm de-emphasizing that one.
Yeah. Everybody talks about, and it's funny, I was having this conversation the other day. I was speaking at a conference, and we were having this debate about it. When people come to you and they say, listen, my business isn't growing. How do I do marketing? It's like this follow-on question, right? If I had $10 for every time someone came to me and said, my website, it's got traffic, but it's not got any sales. I need to do marketing. How do I do it? I need to get more people to my website. How do I do that cheaply? I'm like, if I go with your results route, you have actually missed steps 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
You should not be on marketing right now. You should be on steps 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
And I like the fact when I look at your results loop, we've not talked about marketing until number 4.
Yeah.
And we've got around the corner, and that I think is that I mean, it's obviously deliberate. Why did you put it there? Maybe a better question.
Well, this goes back to my agency experience. Is very similar to what you had. People come, they couldn't get results. It's like, that's why you have to have the fundamentals down. Like, you're not what I call marketing ready. And when I say marketing ready, most people think, oh, I don't have the capacity to fulfill 10 million orders. That's not what I'm saying here. Like, you're literally not ready to be marketing. You should not be marketing until you define those first 3 areas.
Yeah. That's so important. So important. But when you, we've had a lot of people on the show talking about marketing, but for you, what are some of the key strategies here? Some of the key things that you would focus on if you were starting your cake business again, your e-commerce business?
Well, I would start on what I have here. Who is my markets? What am I going to deliver them from a product and service perspective? And then the value proposition. I would go, that's why I created this loop, because that would be the order I'd go in. Obviously, I would take into account the operations and the profitability, all the financial parts. And actually, if I did anything in my business career, I would have got a better handle on my numbers.
Okay.
Like, I would be getting the bookkeeper in right away, having everything documented. That would probably, and I think creatives have that hard, that challenge more than most, because they, like, I'm a creator. I like to create stuff. I'm always building things, and it's like, oh, that financial stuff is boring. But that's how you keep score. So if I was to do any of my businesses over again, I would have that in place at the very, very get-go. That's probably the biggest mistake I've made, but a lot of businesses I work with have that as well.
That's really interesting. That's really fascinating. Okay. So what are some of the things that, assuming you've done 1, 2, and 3, and you've come around to number 4 then with your e-commerce business, what are some of the things that you would look at in marketing? Some of the key touch points. I'm just curious to know what's important you think in this area.
Yeah. So in terms of getting new buyers, that should really match, and you kind of hit on this yourself, it's got to match those areas. And so, I had the question all the time too, where people have traffic, but it's not converting. Well, do you have your value proposition very clear?
Mm-hmm.
Can people self-identify themselves on the website, on a market? So if you ever been into a restaurant and everyone's, 30 years older than you, do you feel out of place? Or that young,
Yeah.
you go in, you're the oldest person there. You feel out of place. Same thing on a website. They call that message to market match.
Yeah.
People want to make sure they belong there, because if they don't, they're not going to convert. And so making sure all these things go along on your website, but then taking that even further, is that matching your blog posts? Is it matching your lead magnets, your downloadables? Do they match who actually your targeted buyer is? Because the more specific you are, generally the higher the conversion rate.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Really interesting. I've heard this called many different names, USP, that kind of, what's your proposition, your unique proposition, your unique selling point. And this language has got, I actually use the word context, where, what is the key dilemma you are solving for your client? Yeah. And have you put that on the website in a way that they can self-identify with, right?
Right. No, that's it.
And that for me is the key, right? So if you're doing a consulting business, I am a online e-commerce consultant that will 10x your business. Yeah. And you don't even, I will 10x your business, even if you are utterly confused by all the jargon and lingo that people are using, right?
Yeah.
So someone's going to come across that and they're going to go, that's me. I don't understand what people are saying, but I want to grow my business. I'm going to talk to this guy. So they're self-identifying because I've clearly articulated to them who I'm serving and how I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. People want to be understood. They want to know that you understand them and can solve the problem, because that's really why people buy. It goes back to their motives. I guess this is a more advanced thing I teach in my value course, but essentially motives. Like they're either moving towards gain or away from pain. And pain is a stronger thing to move, in terms of marketing.
Yeah, it is.
But that's the first thing they have to see is, like, are they addressing the problem I have?
Yeah.
That's the key thing, because that's what drives it. And that's really what that exchange is about. Like, if you look at what I said before, like, here's where they are, here's where they want to be. That's what I call the value, the results bridge. The distance you take them from here to there is really driving how much value you're really providing, and therefore how much money you can actually make. So it's all about, the bigger the problem you solve for as many people as possible, the more value you'll provide, the more money you'll bring back in.
That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. Fantastic. I feel like I could talk about this all night, but we should probably get on to point number 5.
That can get very deep. Number 3 can get very deep.
I can see we're going to have more conversations about this, Tony. Yeah. So we've gone through number 4, the numbers. We're now on number 5, which is?
That is the size of the buyer, or lifetime value. And so this is looking at...
I was thinking size as in size.
Yeah, no. The size of the buyer.
10?
No, this is the size of the buyer. So once you have a buyer, not all buyers are equal. And this is where you want to know your markets, because you might find that some markets are worth much more. Those are the ones you want to go after. And that comes down as a function of their lifetime value, which is how much they're spending, and really over, how many times they're spending it.
That's really, really cool. So a classic example of this, and tell me if I'm hitting this or if I'm totally missing the point here. So at Jersey, the beauty company we have numerous different skincare brands on there, right? And one of them is a French skincare brand called Guino. And the typical buyer of Guino is very different to, say, the typical buyer of a brand like Dermalogica, for example. So these are 2 skincare brands. I don't expect you to know them, Tony, it's fine. But what I would say is the average spend of a Guino buyer is much higher than the average spend of a Dermalogica buyer. Mm-hmm. The Guino buyers tend to be older, have more disposable income. They tend to reside more in the wealthier parts of the UK. Not all necessarily, but you can see from the graphs where they sort of tend to reside more. But Dermalogica is a much more popular product. So the market size for Dermalogica is bigger, but the average order value of a Gino customer is much higher. And so there's this really interesting dilemma we have. Do we put resource into going after the bigger Dermalogica market where it's hyper competitive, or do we put resource into going to the smaller market where the size of it, the average order value for me is much, much higher, where there's less competition, but there's less, it's a much smaller pond, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That's it. And then in terms of taking action, this is where those upsells and cross sells comes into play, because that's what directly increases the value, or bundles. There's so many ways to do it, especially in e-commerce. E-commerce is great because you can automate a lot of what would happen in an offline world where you have a salesperson, not very reliable. If it's done online, you can leverage data. It's just a much more powerful scenario. And so that's how you increase your size of your buyer.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. And then finally, we are coming around to loyalty. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Loyalty is probably the most.
I just love this word. This was the one that, if I'm honest with you, the one word that stuck out to me more than any on your loop was this last one, loyalty. I'm like, I can't wait to hear what he's got to say about this.
This is my favorite one because it's the most underappreciated, and it's usually where I start. So if it's a startup, I go around the loop. If it's an established company, you go reverse, because loyalty is always the lowest hanging fruit. Because again, going back to lifetime value and cost per acquisition, there is no cost per acquisition, because you've already acquired the customer. So loyalty, to define it, is really two things. It's looking at, how do I get the buyers to buy more? And then secondly, how do I get them to drive referrals? How do I get them to advocate for me? Yeah. Because that is a huge thing that businesses miss all the time.
So, I mean, this is fascinating. And I call this repeatability and referability, right? So the yo-yo effect is in my language, in terms of getting these people, our loyal customers, to buy from us time and time again, but also getting them to refer out and be our evangelists, our promotion experts, and all that sort of stuff. What are some of the things then that you have seen in helping our customers, referrers and promoters and sharers? What are some of the tips and tricks that you've picked up there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many things you can do with loyalty, but the foundational thing is really to have a good product. That's that's the first thing. That's the first, because nobody will say that. Most people will give you some tactic. Oh, use this special pop-up, remind them. No, start with your product. And so I actually have a pyramid. Product. I have a I think it's the retention pyramid. I have ascension for loyalty. So there's two frameworks I use and I teach about that. But essentially, you want to start the base. How is your product? How is your customer service? And then you kind of work up to the more tactical things and the things that will drive, but also be remarkable. Yeah. Like that's what you did with the popcorn, right? Yeah. So that was something, it was what they call a pattern interrupt. People see something, and then, if we're having this podcast, all of a sudden a gorilla walks behind me, that's going to get your attention, right? Yeah, you're going to say what, so it's called pattern interrupt. So that's essentially what you do in e-commerce by doing the popcorn, but there's so many other ways you can do it. It takes creativity. If you use creativity, that is, kind of a very easy way, because then you're not enticing someone to refer you. They're doing it on their own accord. And so it's just so much more powerful and more viral. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I like that. Be remarkable. It kind of reminds me of, is it Seth Godin that wrote the book Purple Cow? Yes. Yes. Have you ever read that book all about being remarkable? I've heard about it. I haven't actually read it yet. Yeah. His whole theory was, and this is why I call the book Purple Cow. He said, if you saw a purple cow, that's remarkable. And he talks about remarkability as in, you are going to remark about it. You are going to talk about it. Something that is remarkable. Yeah, that was how he defined it, is you are going to talk. That's, for him, was his definition was, if it's remarkable, people will talk about it. They will tell people about it. If you saw a purple cow, you would tell people about it. Yeah. And it's a great book. Definitely, if you're listening, you go read it. I thought it was, and the principles still apply today. But in terms of being remarkable, I think that is fantastic. That's what we did with the popcorn. Absolutely.
That, like you say, that was being remarkable. And I mean, I don't know if you've got any other examples of companies that you think are remarkable.
Well, I mean, Zappos, from an e-commerce perspective, very well known for their customer support. They kind of set the bar for that. Gosh, I'm trying to think of something lately I've bought. Well, even just, there's been examples where I've gotten thank you notes and things like that were totally unexpected, and those can be dynamically generated, so it looks almost like it's real. Things like that, just going the little extra mile. Like there's a saying, was it the last mile isn't crowded, something along those lines. But if you're at the very top of that, you really don't have any competition. So how do you just do that little bit more to stand above the rails?
Great advice.
You're going to be, leap years ahead.
No, I like that. The last mile's not crowded. That's such a good phrase.
Yeah.
And what can you do? I think it's brilliant. Brilliant. How can you think that through? And everybody's got something, right, they could do. Everybody's got something that just makes them stand out. And I found here, Tony, I don't know about you, but I found here, what you can't do is you can't stand still. So what makes me remarkable today, what helps me get commented on today, becomes the normal tomorrow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so you have to keep pushing. You have to keep being innovative, which is great if you're a creative type of person, right? You just that whole thing just gives you a buzz, and you're thriving. Yes, we are going to continue to push. But once you've got but first, before you get pushing, what I'm hearing you say is get these foundations right, and then you can do all the fancy bits that once they're in.
Yeah, because I could get the thank you note, but if I'm ready to ring my wife. We're homeschooling our kids right now because of COVID, and she's ordered these books. She has not she's been on the phone for an hour. She must have called a dozen times by now. Can't reach anybody. We used to love the program. Now we can't stand it. So they could send me a thank you note, and that would probably go in a furnace somewhere, So it's like
you send it back with a picture going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's that's so true. That's so true. I think the other thing to say here is be consistent. I remember we 1 year we were getting so crazy with the beauty company. One of the ladies from the warehouse, a beautiful lady called Nicola, came to me, and she said, "Matt, we're coming up to Easter." I said, "Yeah." She said, and we have this phrase at Jersey called smocks. And we defined a smock as a sexy moment of customer service, right? And so it was a moment of customer service with a little bit of sexiness added to it, a bit of je ne sais quoi, if you like. And so one of the things that we've always said to the guys, listen, if you've got an idea for a smock, I would love to know what it is, right? Especially the guys in the warehouse, because they see who we're sending stuff out to on a regular basis. They touch it. Do you know what I mean? They get it more than anybody. And almost more sometimes than the data you get from Google Analytics. They've got like a sixth sense, these guys. And Nicola came to me, she said, listen, what I want to do is, it's coming up to Easter. So why don't we just put a little, do you have them in the States, Cadbury's cream eggs?
Oh yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic.
Yeah. Let's just put one of those in every order.
Yeah.
And I was like, and this must have been 10 years ago. I said, that's genius. Let's do that. So I go to the store, and I had it back then. I was driving around in a little Mini Cooper, right? Little speed rocket, go-kart on wheels, amazing things. And I literally crammed every square inch of that car with these Cadbury's cream eggs. My kids loved it because they kept finding them for weeks on the way to school, right? Chocolate all over their face. And we put them in the boxes and we sent them out. And you know what? We did that. But when we stopped doing that, maybe 3 or 4 years later, people were like, they would call us, where's my cream egg?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was crazy, because you've got to have that consistency. Yeah. And I thought it was really fascinating. So what they started to do, the girls in the warehouse, they would start to notice different people were ordering different, and they would start to recognize names. So they'd put a handwritten note in a parcel saying, hey, it's Nicola in the warehouse. I see you keep ordering from us. Really appreciate it. It's a family business. Thanks so much. And then she would put some chocolate inside the box. One time she put chocolate inside the box without the note. And so we got this email from the lady in the customer. So this doesn't relate to anything. I just think it's a funny story. We got an email from the lady saying, I'm not being funny, but I think someone left their lunch in my, in my order. Because she got this sort of chocolate without any explanation as to what it was.
That's
she
funny.
was like, so these things can backfire a little bit. I'm not saying they're perfect. So listen, we've gone through markets, we've got offerings, we've got value, we've got our numbers, our marketing, we've got the size, and we've got number 6, loyalty. And the way you've drawn this, I appreciate if you're listening, you are not seeing what I'm seeing on my screen, which is, it's the infinity loop, isn't it?
Yes.
The way you've drawn it, and you've broken the infinity loop up into these sort of 6 areas. And so I'm guessing from the way you draw it and the fact you call it a results loop, as clever as I am, this is not a linear process. You get to the stop and the end. It looks like you've gone right back to the beginning and you're constantly going around. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. It's recursive. You're always going back around it. And so you're never stopping by design, because that's what you have to do. And so I recommend reviewing this at least quarterly. You know, for myself, I review it more than that. I also, it's a great thing to learn and review when you're stuck. You know, so if you're stuck, so for instance, I pivoted some areas of my agency and I referenced the loop for myself. Even though I created it, I use it myself. You can see I have it as a whiteboard even. So I whiteboard my ideas on here and leverage that. I also use the worksheets, and that's really what helps me brainstorm. So, because it's a tool, not just a plan, it's really a way to brainstorm and kind of discover opportunities that you may not have thought about just by going through the exercise.
Yeah. Okay. So why did you, if I can bring this right back to the beginning, why did you call this small steps to grow profits?
Yeah, well, that started actually with my mother. So my mother, unfortunately, grew up in a time very much like what we have today. And so with the pandemic, she contracted polio. So back in the late 1930s, there was a polio epidemic, and she was unable to walk from the age of 9 months old all the way up to 14. Wow. And so even before this, I asked, how did you do that? Like, how did you mentally have the capacity to like survive that? And like, what enabled you to accomplish your vision? Her vision at that age was just simply be able to walk in high heels. Something, you know, maybe a lot of people take for granted. For her, that was like her vision. And so when she was in the hospital, they started off, you know, doing pottery so she could build up her nervous system and get a little strength. Then she progressed to the pool, learned to swim a little bit, gain more strength. And then finally walking between 2 poles, she went step by step or took small steps. And that was really kind of the impetus behind the results loop of like knowing what to take. Because for business owners, it's what do I have to do? How do I do it? And how do I take action? That was something she learned even in that hospital as a child. So this is not just a business lesson. This is a life lesson.
That's a wonderful story. That is a wonderful, and that must mean a lot to you, right? That you've managed to sort of connect all these things together. That's so powerful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So going around this loop, this is you taking your small steps, isn't it? And you're doing this every quarter or however long it is. And you're taking these small steps, and this will work whether you're doing a startup business, whether you're starting out in e-commerce, or whether you're a big corporate organization. The principles are still the same, right?
Yes. Yeah. I try to take it principles. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it because you've simplified it and I get it. I understand it. Now, I have in front of me a PDF with a lot more of this information in that you talk about, which I somehow downloaded off your website. So can people get access to more of this information if they need to?
Yes, absolutely. So it's completely free. And I mean free as in no lead form or anything. Like I
didn't have to fill out my email. I was really shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, he's not asked me for my name and email. I'm definitely downloading this. Yeah.
I really just want people to have the information. And so you just go to smallstepsmanifesto.com and it's available. And there's the diagram, the loop, some of the stories we talked about, and a whole lot more.
Yeah, no, do go ahead to the site, Tony's site, smallstepsmanifesto.com, and you can download that PDF. And as always, we will put a link to Tony's site and to, how to connect with Tony on the website. So you can always download that in the show notes. But this is a 37-page PDF. I'm scrolling down it now as I'm talking. It is a beautifully, I mentioned this to you before, it's beautifully designed and easy to read, easy to scan, and jam-packed full of all kinds of amazing information. I see all kinds of cool company logos at the bottom as well. And there's a very, very flattering photo of you in there, Tony.
Yeah. Good Photoshop skills,
No, it looks great. It looks great. Listen, how do people get hold of you if they want to get hold of you?
Yeah, probably the best way, go to my website, meettonyg.com. You scroll down to the bottom, just connect me on LinkedIn and just tell me you saw the show.
That'll be great. So meettonyg.com
Correct.
Is your website. And you can go there and connect with Tony through that on LinkedIn and also through smallstepsmanifesto.com. Go check that out. Tony, listen, finally, I think we've made it through. We've made it to the end. I really appreciate you sticking with it. And I honestly, I've learned a lot. I've got a lot of notes and we've really, really enjoyed you being with us. Before you go, sorry, there's one question I did have for you.
Yeah.
And that is about your book.
Yes.
You've got a book. Either it's out or it's coming out very soon.
It's coming out. It's coming out very soon. You can pre-order it today. So if you go to that website, the manifesto, Small Steps Manifesto, you can, there's a link within the PDF to pre-order it. So that's available now for pre-order.
Awesome. And the book is about what you've talked about. Is that right?
Yes. So the manifesto took some of the juiciest parts out from the book and it's all there for the taking. But if you want to go deeper, then it's all in the book.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and you can pre-order that at smallstepsmanifesto.com. And yeah, I will be on the list. I'm going to go and pre-order. Will you deliver to the UK?
Yeah, of course. Especially
we'll
for you.
It out. Yeah. We'll figure it out. That's great. Tony, listen, again, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us. It has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
So there you go. That was a show with Tony. That was the final episode of season number 3. I hope you got a lot out of it. Wasn't Tony fantastic, giving us so much value? Really grateful to him for doing that. Do check out his stuff. Do connect with him online because it will be worth it. Trust me, download that PDF. It is jam-packed worth the stuff. So we will be back again very soon with season 4. That's right. We're going to be on season 4. So this is the final episode of season 3. We'll be back in just a few short weeks with season 4 with some more great guests on how to drive and grow your own e-commerce business. So do stay connected with us. Thanks for being with us. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And I promise when we're back, we will have the live streaming thing fixed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the eCommerce podcast with Matt Edmundson. Join us next time for more interviews, tips, and tools for building your business online.